How can an island sit inside a lake that sits inside an island that sits inside another lake? What could make hundreds of fish rise out of the dark at exactly the same moment? Every single day, like clockwork no one built. How does a waterfall wider than 4 football fields come out of a cliff with no river, no lake, nothing visible feeding it at all? And what would make a handful of people choose to live entirely alone for months at a time, guarding a reef most of the world will never see? Not the beaches. What's underneath them? None of it needed a filter, a caption, or an audience. It was already here. An hour south of Manila, geography stops behaving the way it's supposed to. What do you call a landscape that keeps nesting inside itself, with no obvious point where it's supposed to stop? Taal Lake holds an island. That island holds its own lake, a crater filled with acid green water. And inside that crater lake, a small second island rises. A lake on an island in a lake. Geologists call the whole system a resurgent caldera. A volcano still restless enough to keep quietly rearranging its own geography. The nesting isn't a trick of the map. It's the same volcanic structure repeating itself at 3 different scales. Each ring the scar of an eruption, older than the one before it. Taal is one of the smallest active volcanoes on Earth by footprint, and also one of the most closely watched. It has erupted more than 30 times in recorded history, each one quietly redrawing the same nested shape a little differently. Fishermen on the outer lake still work waters their grandfathers worked, close enough to watch steam rise from the inner crater on a still morning. Living, quite literally, in the shadow of all 3 nested rings at once. The water in the innermost crater is so acidic that almost nothing survives in it. Steam vents hiss along the shoreline, and in places the ground itself stays warm underfoot. A place you have to say out loud twice, just to believe you understood it right. Deep in the rainforest of Davao Oriental, water has been carving a staircase for longer than anyone has been alive to measure it. How long does it take water alone to carve 130 stone steps into solid rock? Aliwagwag drops for more than 1,100 feet. Not in a single sheet, but across more than 130 natural stone steps, stacked one above the other, like a staircase built for something far larger than a person. Locals call it the Stairway to Heaven. In the dry season, the water runs clear enough to see every ridge of stone beneath it. In the wet season, it turns into a single roaring wall of white, loud enough to hear through the trees before you ever see it. At 1,100 feet, it stands roughly as tall as the Eiffel Tower. Except this one was built entirely out of water and time, with no architect at all. Locals and visitors alike bathe in the lower pools, where the many small cascades between tiers create calm, shallow basins. The gentlest possible introduction to a waterfall built on this scale. In 2012, a super typhoon tore through this part of the country and stripped the surrounding forest bare. Aliwagwag kept flowing through it. Within a few years, the green came back, and the water never stopped finding its way down the same 130 steps. Some places are built to withstand a storm. This one was already built to survive. Most rivers begin in the mountains. This one seems to begin somewhere no one has ever actually seen. How does a river know what time it is? Hinatuan Enchanted River gets its color from a sinkhole at its center. Fed by salt water, pushed up from an underground cave system before it flows out toward the Pacific. Near the banks, the water is a pale, glassy turquoise. Toward the middle, it turns a blue so deep and so saturated that most people assume the footage has been edited. It hasn't. To this day, no diver has reached the true bottom of the sinkhole. Strong reverse currents and a cave system that has never been fully mapped keep most of it a mystery. The river has no visible surface source at all. No stream feeding it from the hills, no lake at its head. Everything that fills it rises from underneath. Swimmers who paddle out toward the center describe a strange effect. The water is so clear that the boundary between the river and the space around it seems to disappear entirely. No one has ever fully explained how the fish know. They simply do every day, whether anyone is there to watch or not. And every day, at exactly noon, a bell rings across the water. Everyone is asked to leave the river. Then, from somewhere in that unmapped blue, hundreds of fish rise to the surface at once, not fed by hand, not driven there, simply arriving on a schedule nobody built and nobody controls. Then they vanish back into the dark, and the swimming starts again as if nothing happened. A river that answers to a clock no one set. On Mindanao, a wall of water spreads nearly 140 meters across a cliff face, the widest waterfall curtain in the country. At nearly 60 meters high and 140 wide, it is broad enough that a single wide shot can barely hold the whole curtain in frame at once. For centuries, this entire wall of water stayed folded behind the branches of one enormous banyan tree, visible to no one outside the immediate area, until the storm that exposed it in 2010 rewrote the map overnight. What kind of waterfall doesn't need a river to exist? Stand above it and look for the source. There isn't one. No river arrives at the top. No lake feeds it. Just rock, moss, and ferns. And somehow, out of all of that, water. The falls are fed entirely by rainwater, filtered slowly through volcanic rock, and seeping out through hundreds of narrow cracks at once, rather than falling as a single stream. It comes out so clean that people living nearby drink it straight from the cliff, sweet, cold, and safe, filtered by the mountain itself, rather than by anything built. For centuries, a giant banyan tree hid the entire waterfall from view. In 2010, a storm uprooted it and revealed a landmark that had been standing unseen the whole time. 140 meters of water, with nowhere it's supposed to be coming from. South of the falls, the land dissolves into water, and the water disappears into a forest that grows straight out of the sea. What does it take for a forest to double as a wall strong enough to stop a typhoon? In the fishing villages around Phnom Penh, homes are built on stilts driven directly into living mangrove trunks. The forest itself becomes both the foundation and the wall against the next storm. The roots that make this possible arch high above the waterline before diving back into the mud. A structure built to flex with the tide rather than resist it, which is exactly why it survives what rigid structures don't. Local fishermen still read these channels the way a highway driver reads street signs. Narrow gaps between roots that lead somewhere and identical-looking gaps that don't. At the river mouths, fresh water pouring down from the mountains meets the salt tide of the Camotes Sea, and the two never fully agree. A shifting boundary in the water where freshwater fish and saltwater fish cross paths within a few feet of each other. When Super Typhoon Haiyan tore through this coast in 2013, these same mangroves took the worst of the wind and waves meant for the villages behind them, and mostly held a forest that is a home, a border, and a shield all at once. Further along the coast, a river runs through rock that looks like it belongs to a different planet. Millions of years of water have carved the limestone banks of the Tanipak into shapes too sharp and too strange to look natural. Ridges, hollows, and curves that shift with every bend in the river, depending on the light and the weather. The water itself changes color from pale emerald to a deep sky blue, always sharp against the bone-white stone. Along its length, the rock formations naturally divide the river into a chain of separate pools, each one its own quiet, enclosed world. Local guides say every pool along the river has its own name and its own personality, passed down the same way a favorite fishing spot might be. Remembered, not mapped. There is no single best time to see it. Overcast light turns the water a deep, saturated emerald, while full sun bleaches it toward a pale, almost tropical sky blue. Floating here, boxed in by cliffs on both sides with nothing but birdsong and cold water, it is easy to forget which century you're in. Off the northern coast of Mindanao sits an island with an unusual distinction. It has more volcanoes than towns. How many volcanoes does it take before an island has more of them than towns? 7 volcanoes rise across Camiguin's small landmass, with Mount Hibok, the island's youngest and most active, almost permanently wrapped in cloud. Locals sometimes call Camiguin the island born of fire, and the description is closer to literal history than metaphor. Every hill on it traces back to one eruption or another. Locals still point out the exact spot where the old town bell tower is said to have stood, now visible only as a shadow beneath the waves on the clearest days. Proof of what this island can do sits just offshore. In 1871, an eruption sank an entire town, church and cemetery included, beneath the sea. Today, divers and low-tide walkers can still find gravestones standing on the seafloor. A graveyard the ocean simply moved into. Nearby, a fragile white sandbar appears and disappears with the tide. The newest, calmest thing this island has produced. Floating a short swim from a cemetery its own volcano once buried. Off the southern tip of Cebu, there's a stretch of water where seeing the largest fish on the planet isn't a matter of luck. What would it take to guarantee a meeting with the largest fish in the ocean? Oslob is one of the only places on Earth where whale sharks appear close to shore, reliably enough that an encounter is treated as close to certain, sometimes within minutes of leaving the beach. The encounters are tightly regulated. No touching, no chasing. Boats holding a fixed distance. Rules put in place after scientists raised concerns about how closely feeding wild sharks might change their natural behavior. Even with the debate, the boats keep launching before sunrise, and the sharks keep appearing. An arrangement between a fishing community and one of the ocean's largest animals that neither side seems ready to end. These are animals up to 12 meters long, roughly the length of a school bus, with skin 10 centimeters thick. Among the toughest hide in the natural world, and a pattern of white spots as individually unique as a fingerprint. No 2 whale sharks anywhere on Earth are marked the same way. You are not allowed to touch them. You don't need to. The current alone, when one glides past close enough, is enough to move your whole body in the water. On Coron Island, a lake sits sealed inside a ring of limestone cliffs so sheer they look poured rather than formed. From the surface, Barracuda Lake is glass still, the cliffs reflected so perfectly, it's hard to tell where the rock ends and the water begins. Divers who go beneath it describe something the surface never shows. Fresh water and salt water sitting in layers that refuse to mix, each holding its own temperature, so that a single dive here can feel like passing through invisible walls of warmth and cold. Whatever is happening underneath, from above, the lake keeps its secret perfectly, just still water and cliffs old enough to have watched the whole island form around them. Not every mountain here is defined by what you can see from it. Some are defined by what you can't. Mount Banahaw rises over 7,000 feet, its slopes wrapped for much of the year in fog thick enough to swallow the forest whole within minutes. For generations, the mountain has drawn pilgrims and folk religious groups who consider its slopes sacred ground. For over a decade, it has stood under strict government protection to let the damaged forest recover. Access is limited, and much of it remains officially closed. What's left is a mountain that gets more mysterious the less anyone is allowed to see of it. In northern Luzon, there is a mountain people climb in the dark for a view that only exists for a few minutes each morning. What does it take for a mountain summit to float free of the ground it's standing on? Mount Pulag is the third highest peak in the country, and its slopes pass through 3 different worlds in a single hike. Thick forest at the base, moss-heavy cloud forest halfway up, and near the summit, open grassland cold enough to frost over, even though the entire country sits in the tropics. On the coldest mornings, frost forms directly on the grass blades, a sight most Filipinos associate with foreign winters, not their own highlands. Guides who make the climb regularly say no 2 sunrises here ever look quite the same. Some mornings the cloud sea is thin and torn, others so solid that hikers swear they could walk straight across it. Before dawn, the valleys below disappear under a solid white sea of cloud, and the summit seems to float free of the ground entirely. An island with nothing beneath it but sky. The whole region is strictly protected national park. And the mountain also serves as a critical headwater source for the rivers running off it. For a few minutes, each sunrise, gravity feels optional. One more place first. Somewhere almost no one is allowed to see at all. What kind of place turns visitors away, no matter how much they're willing to pay? Beneath Samar, the Langun-Gobingob Cave system stretches for more than 11 kilometers through 12 enormous chambers. Once considered the second largest cave network in Southeast Asia. It was fully surveyed only in the 1980s, decades after most of the country's other major landmarks had already been mapped, photographed, and open to visitors. Even now, most of what has been surveyed represents only a fraction of what explorers believe is actually down there. Passages that dead end in darkness, waiting for someone qualified enough to keep going. Getting inside isn't a matter of buying a ticket. Entry requires a permit, a licensed specialist guide, and a physical screening. Fail the health check, and you're turned away, regardless of what you're willing to pay. Reaching the chambers means wading through underground rivers up to the waist and rappelling into shafts with no natural light at all. Caverns call the largest chamber the mother of all rooms. Scale so overwhelming that headlamps barely reach the ceiling. Some places are guarded by distance. This one is guarded by the human body's own limits. Far out in the Sulu Sea, past the point where land disappears from view in every direction, a handful of people have chosen to live entirely alone. Tubbataha Reef is one of the most protected marine sanctuaries on Earth. Beneath the surface, a coral city, dense enough with life that divers joke it would be stranger to see no sharks here than to see dozens. Whale sharks, manta rays, hammerheads, entire walls of reef shark moving in formation. The park has been recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1993 and covers an area of open water larger than some entire provinces, nearly all of it accessible only by boat and only for a few months each year when the sea allows it. When their rotation ends and the rangers finally return to land, several have described the same strange sensation. That solid ground, full of people and noise, is what now feels unfamiliar. The park itself covers an area larger than some entire provinces, almost all of it open water. A handful of rangers responsible, in practice, for guarding a wilderness most countries would need an entire agency to patrol. But above the water, the only sign that anyone is watching over any of it is a single ranger station, standing on stilts in open ocean, with nothing else in sight. The rangers who staff it live there for months at a stretch. No town nearby, no road, nothing but waves, wind, and the reef beneath them, which they are the only thing standing between and the people who would take from it. When a storm comes, there's nowhere else to go. They simply wait it out, alone, on a platform in the middle of the sea. The wildest place here isn't the one furthest from people. It's the one where a few people chose to stay, on purpose, so it could stay wild for everyone else. Not every impossible place in this country was made by nature alone. What do you do when the same wind that could power an entire province could also tear it apart? On the northern coast of Ilocos Norte, 20 wind turbines follow the curve of Bangui Bay for more than 5 miles. Each one roughly as tall as a 20-story building, standing directly in the path of some of the strongest, most constant wind in the country. They were built for a simple reason. This region needed electricity, and the wind never stopped blowing. But standing beneath them, the scale stops feeling practical and starts feeling geological. Trees along the coast permanently bent in one direction. The whole landscape leaning toward the turbines, like it's bowing to them. On the clearest evenings, the turbines are lit from below and turn slowly against the sunset. A sight so unexpectedly striking that the wind farm now draws more visitors than several of the province's older historical landmarks combined. When the turbines were first installed, some residents worried the giants would disturb the coastline's fishing grounds. 2 decades later, the waters beneath them remain some of the most consistently worked in the province. Turbines and boats sharing the same wind without much conflict at all. This coast sits directly in the path of the country's worst typhoons. The same wind that funds a region's electricity also threatens to tear it apart every storm season. So the blades are engineered to lock themselves down and ride it out. the same force. Harnessed on the calm days, survived on the violent ones. It isn't a wonder of nature. It's a wonder of what happens when people stop fighting a force and learn to stand inside it instead. An island that keeps nesting inside itself. A river that answers to a clock no one set. A waterfall with no visible source. A handful of people who chose isolation so a reef could stay alive. A staircase of water that grew back green after a storm tried to strip it bare. A wall of turbines that turn the same wind that threatens them into the thing that keeps the lights on. None of this needed to be impossible. It only needed enough time, enough pressure, enough distance from anyone paying attention, until distance itself became the thing that kept it whole. The Philippines everyone photographs is the coastline. What actually shapes it, the geology that keeps folding in on itself, the caves that turn people away, the wind harnessed and survived in the same breath, happens somewhere just out of frame. Impossible is just a word for the places we haven't caught up to understanding yet. If you'd like to keep finding them, subscribe and join us on the next journey.